So I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Marcy Tabor. I'm the Personal Lines Manager. I've been with Abram Interstate since 2007, and I started in the auto insurance industry at a retail brokerage and worked there for approximately 14 years, and then moved over to the company side in 2007. So together with our team in the Personal Lines Department, we put together this new and improved program for Lloyd's of London, and we did that with you, the broker, in mind.
And hello, my name is Vanessa Reddish, and I'm also a Personal Lines Account Manager. I have been working with Abram Interstate for 3 years, and prior to that, I worked for Farmers Insurance for 5.
So a little bit about our agenda. We're going to go over our program appetite, and that's going to be for both of our homeowners and dwelling fire program. We're going to go over how to quote and how to submit business, what you're going to do to bind coverage, and then what happens after you bind coverage. And then at the end, we'll have any question and answer sessions that you may have.
All right, for our homeowners product, the minimum coverage A limit is $100,000 with the TIV, the total insurable value, with a maximum of $2 million. And what the total insurable value is it's coverage A, B, C, and D. So if you add all of those up, it cannot exceed $2 million. If it does exceed $2 million, we do have another product with our Lloyd of London Brit contract, but this is for the Advent one. 100,000 is the minimum. We have all protection classes offered, so don't think we don't write in the high PCs. We will write those risks. We recently revised our rates to be more competitive, so we hope that you'll give us a try. And we have HO3 and HO3 policy forms available. We will write losses that were multiple losses and any lapses in coverage. We have customized options, so some carriers won't write policies where there is, for instance, other structures, they have like a cap of a maximum 10%, but we will write other structures with increased value. So we'll even entertain ones that have the same limit sometimes as the coverage A limit, like if there's a barn and a pool house and lots of items that add up to make it, a significant increase than the normal carrier's cap, we will write those risks. We also can customize unacceptable dog breeds. We will write with the total animal exclusion, we have an option for that. We also have an option to write a total pool exclusion. For instance, if the pool is partially filled or there's a diving board, we have options to tailor your coverage. And then we do write in all counties in California. If you think there's a restriction, there is not. For the dwelling fire program, the minimum coverage A limit is $50,000, again with a total insurable value of $2 million. We will write vacation rentals, Airbnbs, and tenant-occupied dwellings. We have replacement cost is available on content. Again, all protection classes we will write. We recently revised our rates on the dwelling fire program as well. And we will list property managers as an additional interest. We have all counties in California are considered, and again, we do not have a restriction. Previously, there was a cap at 10% on dwelling fires. We have removed that cap. That is no longer the case, and we can also do increased substructures on dwelling fire program.
Okay, so here's some examples of some of the risks that we write. We do write seasonal and secondaries on a homeowner's form. In the past, we have only written those on dwelling fire form, but we have moved to be able to write those on a homeowner's form. There is some criteria that needs to be met for that, such as coverage A needs to be a minimum of $300,000, but we will entertain that on the homeowner's form. Properties that are in the name of an LLC or a trust or corporation, we have no issues with writing coverage titled that way. We can even list any of those, the LLC, trust, or corporation as the named insured. We do write lower value homes as long as there is good maintenance of the home. And again, for homeowners, the minimum is $100,000, coverage A, and dwelling fire is $50,000. Property on post and pier, property on slope, we have no issues with that. We will write log homes, dome homes, and hobby farms. The hobby farms do have to be personal use. If there is a situation where it's not personal use, we do have a farm department, and we often refer risks over there, and they can usually write those. Risks on large acreage. There is no cap to the number of acres that the property sits on. Some of other carriers, admitted or not, may have a cap at 5, 7, or 10 acres, but we have no cap on that. It just has to be personal use. And then private lenders are acceptable as the mortgagee. It doesn't have to be a bank. Single-family residence up to a 4-plex. So previously on the homeowners form, we only allowed single-family and up to a duplex. 4-plex is acceptable on the homeowners form. It's always been acceptable on the dwelling fire. We just need to make sure that if it is a 4-plex, at least one of the units is owner-occupied. And then older homes are acceptable with updates and maintenance. We do have a 1-page supplemental that does need to be completed when the risk is an older home, but we definitely don't have any issues with offering coverage on risks that are older. Wood stoves are acceptable, and we can accept wood stoves as primary heat in most cases. And then risks with a discharge bankruptcy within the last 3 years. Some of the other carriers that we see, or agents that give feedback, say that bankruptcy has to be discharged within 5 to 7 years, but we go 3. And then multiple losses of the same type. Sometimes you may need underwriter approval, not always, but if you have multiple water losses or you have multiple thefts or even fire claims, we will definitely entertain that risk. And if there's something that's unusual to a risk that you'd like to discuss, just call or email an account manager. We specialize in not writing the cookie cutter risk.
All right, let's go to a question. What is the minimum coverage A amount we will write in our homeowners program? Please type that into the chat box.
Jennifer Ryan, or is it Karen?
Go up a little bit.
Karen.
All right. Karen McClett, you are the lucky winner of a $25 Amazon gift card.
Yay, Karen!
Okay. So, how to quote and how to submit. If you're using the Peer Rater, it's a self-registering website. So you can go on there and it'll walk you through how to get set up. And then once you've prepared and submitted your quote through the Peer Rater, an account manager will approve the risk and will notify you if it needs to be reported in-house or not. And then once you've received approval on your rater risk, it will pre-generate an application, B1, the quote sheet, and a financing agreement if they would like to finance it. If you're using the FSC rater, we did just recently revise our rates in the FSC rater, so June 1st, be on the lookout for that. You will need to make sure you're set up to see the Lloyd's rate, so please go into your FSC and click Setup, and then make sure that you have selected the Homeowners Abram Interstate Lloyd's, and then you'll just type in those codes for 678 and 521, and that will allow you to see the new revised rates. And then we also have our Express Rater that's on our website with the ability to quote homeowners, and dwelling fire will be coming soon. And last but not least, we still will accept court applications on homeowners, and you would just send that to apps@abraminterstate.com.
Okay, so let's talk about the account manager's role once your request for a quote is submitted. So the first thing that we do is review the application for complete information in order to approve a rate. So the application has to have the key information that we need in order to provide a quote and a bindable rate. The first thing that we do is look at the risk location and the address, making sure that that's noted on the application. After we look at that information, we'll go to various websites used to review the risk. We look for updates. That's probably one of the key items that is normally left off of an application. So if you have a home that's older, you want to make sure that you go into the renovation section, and usually that's sort of in the middle of the page on an accord to the right-hand side, and it will list electrical, plumbing, wiring, and roof. So we need to have the update year listed and disclosed on that application. If you're in the Pure Rater, you have drop-downs where you'll have updates 0 to 30 years or 31 to 50 or 51 and older. But we need to have that information, and that's going to allow us to be able to provide the best policy form for what you're submitting. So some of the question may be, you know, the home is older, it's on copper wiring, but it hasn't been replaced, so I didn't put an update in. But what we're looking for is not that you've, ripped out all the wiring or that your customers ripped out all the wiring. We're confirming that it has been serviced and maintained and updated as needed. We're not looking to have the entire house rewired in most cases. So it's just as it has been serviced, as it has been updated for all of those items, electrical, plumbing, wiring, and roof. Protection class is reviewed. We look at the distance to the nearest fire hydrant. We look for the distance to the nearest fire station, whether it be a career fire station, 24-hour manned, or volunteer. That's the word I was looking for. So we look at both of those. If you have special information that you can give us where the customer may not have a hydrant that's within 1,000 feet, but they have water tanks on the property or some other source of water, let us know that, because that is important in determining rate and where we're going to quote the risk. We also order clear reports and other various reports that will review the claims history on that property. And we look at prior fire history in some of our higher protection classes. Risk meter is something that we also ordered that gives us some information on brush status and also fire department information if we're not able to locate it somewhere else. So all of these factors, the updates, the protection class, how it's occupied, confirming coverage, all of that is what we use to determine the best policy form, the best market, and then the best price.
All right, how to bind. So once you've received your firm quote from Abram, you would send your request to binds@abraminterstate.com, and please include the signed application and the signed B1 form. Premium payment will be required at binding unless it's paid by a lender, and if it is, please just make sure to include the mortgagee's address and the loan number. Please include any additional supplemental forms that we requested, like the older home questionnaire as an example, and then if they would like to finance, the finance agreement, and then any other special instructions that we've advised. Once we've received your bind request, we will process the bind and send you confirmation with the policy number via email. An inspection report will be ordered 72 hours, and we will notify you that this has been done. And then we will also send an email if any of the above items are missing to prevent further policy action. Okay, question number 2. What is the email address you use to send quote requests? Please type that. Looks like Janice Miller, you are the lucky winner of a $25 Amazon gift card.
Okay, so let's talk about the inspection process. So we've quoted the risk, the customer's accepted it, you've turned in your bind, all of your paperwork's turned in, money paid, the whole deal. Now, the next thing that we do is order an inspection. And an inspection is, first of all, verifying that the home is indeed there, and just the characteristics that we have on the application and the information that the customer provided you is correct. So it's just a confirmation, and we do inspect every new business risk. So the things that we look for, especially in the higher protection classes, is brush clearance around the property and around other structures. So it's not just the main dwelling, but it's anything on that property like a detached garage or a barn or something that's within the property limits. We look at everything. We look for trees to be trimmed back from the roof line, nothing that's overhanging on the roof. And sometimes there's a confusion on what's considered brush. We do not consider trees to be brush. Brush is more low-lying vegetation or excessive pine needles that are next to the property or the decking or the other structures. So we're looking more for that information, but not trees on the property. Dead trees on the property and near other structures would be an issue. So brown dead trees next to any covered structure, whether it be for coverage A or B, would need to be removed from the property if it's close to an actual dwelling. Propane tanks need to be cleared of vegetation all on or around the tanks, and usually if there is some vegetation around the propane tank, just simply having the customer go out there and kind of just, use like a weed whacker all the way around so that it's almost down to the dirt. That's all that's needed. The roof is cleared of debris. It doesn't have moss buildup or excessive pine needles covering the top of the roof and in the gutters. The condition of the property, upkeep needs to look good. It needs to look like there has been care of the property being maintained. We look for wood piles that are stacked up against the dwelling. We want to have any sort of wood piles that would be a fire igniter, if there were a fire, to be moved away from the actual dwelling. And then no appliances, junk or debris that's in the yard or around the yard. So when we look at inspections, there are areas of concern that we do find, and some of you may have received memos regarding items that need to be cleared up. But in 85% of the cases where we do send out notices to resolve an issue, those issues, that percentage of the time can be corrected, and then we can be allowed to continue coverage. So the next slide is an example of a house. It's an older home. I mean, this roof looks perfectly fine. This is a perfect risk. There's it's an older home, but the maintenance on that is fine. We would look at that risk and have no problem. Now the next slide is a risk where we received an inspection back, and it does look pretty bad at first glance, but it's not something that we wouldn't be willing to continue on with coverage, provided that the issues are corrected. So the first slide is some damaged steps. So the issue with that is a liability concern, a trip and fall exposure for anyone that's living there or guests that come to the property. So we would normally send a memo out on that to say that the damaged steps need to be corrected. There are certain times when they haven't corrected the damaged step, but they have excluded liability on the policy, and we've chosen to continue with that. The next picture to the, I know, Karen. The next picture to the right is windows. So the window has tape around it, and it looks like there's a hole, peeling paint. We can't accept the window being broken like that, but if the customer is willing to fix that window, then we can continue with coverage. And the bottom two is really just showing debris around the property. If you've got trash and junk and discarded items around the property, we really need to have your customer clean that up. And in most cases, they do. They go to the dump, take the stuff to the dump, and it could be that they, we have a lot of situations where they're just moving in, so they're cleaning out a garage, and they fully intend to go to the dump, but the inspector was there that week. That's perfectly fine as long as we can show pictures from your customer that show that it's been cleaned up. So for this particular one, at first glance it is bad, but it did get resolved and we continued on with coverage.
All right. Yeah. That you provide us with any questions that you have via the chat. Anyone have any questions about what we discussed?
If they want to go to the chat bar, you can scroll through.
The question is,
yeah, go ahead.
The question is, do all protection classes undergo an inspection? And yes, every one of our risks undergo an inspection.
Yeah, all new business, PC 1 through 10, we inspect all of them. We do inspect slightly differently on the 8, 9s, and 10s because of the brush exposure. We do look for some different things than we would for a risk that's, in the middle of town, but we do inspect all. Yeah. On Pure, the finance agreement does print. Your application prints, your D1 prints. You have a quote sheet that gives sort of a synopsis summary of all of your coverages and the premium fees, the inspection fees listed, and your total. And then behind that quote sheet is your finance agreement, which offers a 4-pay, a 9-pay, or pay in full. I want to talk about that, volunteer fire. Oh, yes, volunteer fire departments are acceptable again. We, not sure the time frame on when that wasn't, but that has been open. We will accept volunteer and career. So when the mortgage company is paying the premium, when you're submitting your request to bind, the best thing to do in that case is to notify us on your fax or on your email that this is going to be paid by the lender. When it's paid by the lender, we continue through with the binding process, and then we suspend the payment for 10 to 12 days to come from the lender, but it does not hold up the bind. We do not bill them at new business. At renewal, we will send a renewal offer to you, the broker, to the customer, and to the lender. We send to all three. Any other questions out there? All right. Oh, she didn't want to. Okay, so another question, what is the furthest distance the home needs to be to a hydrant, fire hydrant, or a fire station? Well, I mean, we don't really have anything set in stone there. We have risks where there's no hydrant. There's a hydrant within 1,000. There's a hydrant over 1,000. And then we have fire stations that are within 5 miles and over 5 miles. I mean, it's really a combination of the entire risk. If you were to call in and, you know, ask that question, I mean, really what we would want to do is look at that application, look at where it's located, look at the prior fire history, look at the response time. I mean, there's a lot of different factors in there, so we don't have any type of rule where it has to be within a certain distance to the hydrant or the station.
All right.
All right, well, thank you so much for everyone who attended.
It's been a pleasure, and send us an email if you have any other further questions, and we'll be sending out a copy of the PowerPoint.
Have a good day.
Thank you.